Okay, everyone, and welcome back to the Technocamps Scratch tutorials. And in this video, we'll be looking at the slightly advanced blocks of the motion category in Scratch. This means these 9 blocks after the point towards mouse pointer. So the first one we have is change X by. So that is going to change our X coordinate, okay, left to right across the screen by this number. So we're starting off at X is 0. If we change X by 10, then Scratch will move across 10. And every time we click the green flag, he will continue to change his X coordinate by 10. There we go. Now he's up to 100. Similarly, we have the set X to. So I could set X to, let's say, 100. Now, when I click the green flag, Scratch goes to 100. But every time I click the green flag now, Scratch doesn't move anymore because I'm not changing the X coordinate. I'm setting it to this. It doesn't just happen when you click the green flag. Okay, by the same logic, if I have a forever block, I can forever set X to 100 and Scratch will stay at that position. However, if I forever change X by 10, Scratch moves all the way to the other side of the screen. So these are two very useful blocks, but it's important to be aware that one says set, the other says change, and they do different things. Now, setting is very useful when you want a character to be in a certain position. Without a doubt, it should be in that position. Or maybe you want to set it up where it starts at the start of your game. However, change in X is good for having characters to move. By that same logic, there are change Y and set Y blocks. Can you think of what's going to happen if we change Y by 10? We set Scratch back to 0, 0 to begin. If we change Y by 10, Scratch is going to continually move up the screen every time I click that green flag. I could change Y by minus 50 as well. Don't forget, you can use minus characters within these Scratch blocks. Okay, you can make them negative. And then Scratch will move down the screen 50 blocks at a time. However, if I set Y to be 20, and I click the green flag, Scratch goes to Y20. If I carry on clicking the green flag, the Y doesn't carry on changing. Once it's been set, it's been set. And that's all I'm doing. Okay, so instead of using my go to X and Y block, as we did in the last video, where I could send Scratch to possibly 100, 100, using these blocks, I can either set these positions separately. So maybe I want to set X and set Y, and I could do them separately. Now, that doesn't make much sense per here, but maybe you want to do them at different times in the program. So let's think about that. Maybe I'll set go to 100, 100. I will change Y. I'm going to add weights here so that we can see it happen, okay? I'm going to change Y by minus 50, so Scratch will move down. I'm going to change X by 100, so Scratch moves across. Then I will set X to 0, and then I will set Y to 0. Okay, so we're going to 100, 100, where we are now. We're changing Y by minus 50, X by 100. We're setting X to 0. We're setting Y to 0. Let's see what Scratch does. There we go. So we can do them separately, X and Y coordinates. Instead of using that move block, we can set the actual positions. So that's a useful block to have. The next one we have is if on edge bounce. Now what this does is if Scratch reaches the edge of the screen, instead of just getting stuck, which if we do that move block again and forever move 10 steps, Scratch just gets stuck on the edge, but here. If on edge bounce, we'll make it so that Scratch bounces off the edge. That will also change his direction. Okay, so be aware of that. So we're going to start at 0, 0, move 10 steps, and if he reaches the edge, he's going to bounce. There we go. So now Scratch bounces back and forth across the screen. However, do be aware that if we turn Scratch first, okay, so I'm going to turn Scratch 15 degrees. So he's pointing slightly down this way. Now, if we do it, Scratch's bouncing becomes a bit more chaotic because he's not just bouncing back and forth, he's bouncing at an angle. Okay, so that's the if on edge bounce block. It's very useful when you don't want characters to go off the screen. Let's reset all of these to zeros, or 90 in the case of direction. And the next block we're going to look at is the set rotation style. So, as we know, when we turn Scratch, Scratch turns around this direction, right? He rotates. However, if I change or if I set the rotation style to be left and right and then turn Scratch, nothing happens. Scratch is saying exactly the same. However, you'll see he has actually turned quite a bit. He just hasn't turned on the screen. If instead, right, I turn Scratch by 180 degrees, so he now should turn to face the opposite way. And remember, when we turn Scratch around to do that, so I'm going to have to turn this up. You can also do these options, by the way. These things are down the bottom here. You'll see turn, left, right, and no turn, okay? They're at the bottom here. You can set them manually or in the code. So remember, when I turn Scratch around, he ends up upside down because he's rotated all the way around. However, if I get Scratch pointing this way at 90 degrees, and then I turn him 180, so he should be pointing upside down to the left. Now if I do it, so rotation style left, right means that Scratch doesn't turn all the way around. He doesn't rotate, but when he passes this middle line, he flips. So that can be a good one for making games because you can just have your character move back and forth. We can also use the don't rotate. If I tell Scratch to rotate now, nothing happens. You can see the directions changing. Okay, if I do this 50 and we look at the direction down here, you can see that number changes. But Scratch doesn't actually turn. So why is that useful? Why is the direction changing, but Scratch isn't? Well, if we tell Scratch to move now, so move 10 steps, you can see Scratch does still move in a direction. Change that to 100. Okay, Scratch does move all the way down there, over there. So Scratch still does move in the direction that he's facing. It's just that the character itself doesn't rotate. Same with left, right. Okay, Scratch will move in the direction, but the character won't turn around unless the rotation style is set to all around, and then Scratch does his little turn. Okay, so another very useful block. The final blocks that we have are X position, Y position, and direction. What are these? If I click on X position, it tells me that Scratch is at -31. And Scratch is at -31. Y position tells us Scratch is at 116. Scratch is at 116. Direction, Scratch should be pointing 100 degrees. Scratch is pointing 100 degrees. So these are the measurements of what Scratch is doing. Okay, so Scratch is at 116Y at the minute, right? If I set X to be, so the value of Scratch's X position, which is currently -31 over here. Okay, -31 is about here, and Scratch is at that position. I'm going to set Scratch's X position to be the same as Scratch's Y position. So now Scratch should end up at 116X, 116Y. Let's see. And that is what happens. If I set Scratch's X to be the same as his direction, then Scratch will go back to 100. If I want Scratch, if I put Scratch at 5, let's say, and I tell Scratch to move a direction number of steps, then Scratch will move 100 steps. And that is what Scratch does, moves 100 steps in the direction he was pointing. So these are ways to get these values in your code. Now, what I've done there might not be useful. You might never want to set X and Y to be the same. You might never want to have Scratch move the number of steps in the direction he's pointing. But they can be very useful in some programs to know where is Scratch and what direction is Scratch pointing. And you can use that in your code. You can also turn them on with the ticks like you do with variables. So you can always see what those values for Scratch are. Okay, that is the end of this video. I hope everyone has found that useful. That is all of the movement blocks in Scratch. Good luck, and I'll see you all next time.